La 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner v'tzivanu lehadlik ner v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. La 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 la.
Shabbat Shalom, welcome, Shabbat Shalom, and Mazel Tov to our confirmation and graduation classes, and it's also Teacher Appreciation Shabbat. And so we take the opportunity to honor them, and this year our graduates are Ben Niewaner and Alexis Cohn, who will be here a little bit later, and our confirmands are Ethan Niewaner, Alana Slade, Jacob Brooks, Addison Weinstein, and Sadie Goralnik, and from last year's confirmation class, Hannah Melman. So we have the old joke about the mice in a synagogue, and how do you get rid of the mice in a synagogue? By giving them a b'nai mitzvah. But that is not true about this group of students. And part of, I've always thought that joke is about the huge effort it takes to be a bar bat mitzvah, and after that huge effort, many young people do not continue, but they did. And I've seen them as madrichim, and every time we see them working with the young students, it brings us so much nachas and so much joy. Just wonderful to see all the contributions that they make to this synagogue and have made to this synagogue for years, being friends with each other, leading junior congregation, all the different parts of how they're just part of the essential fabric of what we do here at Temple Har Zion. And we're lucky and blessed to have their amazing teacher, Mark Stopek, who engages them in study and in lively discussions and conversations about Talmud and Tanakh and many other things. And also our appreciation is to all of their teachers through many years of religious school who filled their minds and hearts. Miss Julia, Mrs. Crook, Ms. Rappaport, Ms. Balnick, Mr. Shapira, Mr. Stopek, and this includes our principal, David Schwartz, and we thank them for their dedication and engagement. So let us begin our service. Let us sing together and rejoice together. We're going to hear from them later on. We're going to be praying together. We begin with Shalom Aleichem on page 5. We have a reading.
We don't have a person to read it.
Oh,
you can. It's your reading.
Okay, I'll take it.
Tonight.
We're on page 5. Please join me with a responsive reading. Peace to you, ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, sent by the sovereign of all sovereigns, the Holy One, whom we bless.
Come in peace, angels of peace, messengers of the Most High.
Bless me with peace, angels of peace, messengers of the Most High.
In peace, angels of peace, messengers of the Most High.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, ממלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. פועכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Let us go directly to our Psalms for Friday night, beginning with Psalm 95 on page 11. Lechu neranena l'Adonai, nariya letzor yishenu, nekadma fanav v'todah, bizmirot nariya lo. Finishing up on page 12. Arba'im shana kod bedor, va'omar am to'e levavhem, v'hem lo yadu drachai, asher nishbati v'yapi, im yivon el menuchati. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai baruchu shemo, basru miyom liyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kivodo, b'chol amim nivleotav, kegadol Adonai, u'meulal me'od, norahu al kol Elohim, ki kol Elohei hamimelim, va'adonai shamayim asa, od v'yadar lifanav ozeh tiferet במקדשו. הבו לאדוני משפחות העמים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו. שאו מנחה ובואו לחצרותיו. היי 40 שנה אקוד בדור, ואומרם תוהה לבבהם, והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי ויפי, אם יבואון אל מנוחתי.
Page 15.
Adonai malach tagel haaretz yismechu im rabim.
And on the left-hand side, responsively, Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, and many distant lands rejoice. Flashes of lightning illumine the land, the earth watches and trembles, mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth.
Light is sown for the righteous and joy for the upright. Or zaru ala tzadik ulishre lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher korsho. Mizmor, page 17. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, ki niflaot asa, Oshia lo yemino, uzeroa korsho, di Adonai yeshuato, li'yenei hagoyim gilat tzidkato, zachar chazdo ve'emun, Nato Leve Yisrael Rahu Chol Avsei Aretz Et Yeshuat Eloheinu Ariu L'Adonai Kol Haaretz Pitzchu Veranenu V'Zameru Zamru L'Adonai Bechinor Bechinor V'Kol Zimrat B'chatzot Tzerot V'Kol Kol shofar, Ariu livnei hamelech Adonai, Yiram hayam umlo'o, Tevel v'yoshevaha, Naharot yimcha'u chaf, Yachad harim yiraneinu, Lifnei Adonai kiva, Lishpot haaretz, Yishpot Tevel b'tzedek, v'yamim b'meisharim, yaydai, dai, 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 dai. Adonai malach yirgezu amim, Yoshev kerovim tanut haaretz. Bitzchu. Concluding on page 20, Romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehar korsho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Please rise. We are on page 21, Mizmor LeDavid. Acclaim Adonai, children of the divine, the voice of Adonai over the great sea shatters the cedars, making the trees dance like calves, and blessing his people with peace.
מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בנעלים, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו. הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני ביד הקודש, כל אדוני על המים, את הכבוד ירים. אדוני על מים, מים רבים, כל אדוני בכוח, כל אדוני בידר, כל אדוני שובר ארזים, וישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון, וסיריון כמו בן רעמים. כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש, כל אדוני יחולל על ילות, ויחשוף מערות.
כולו
מרכבות אדוני למבול ישב, ישב אדוני מלך לעולם. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. יאי די 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 די
Please be seated. We turn to Lecha Dodi, page 23, be led by Alana Slade. 23.
Just do the first two.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor vezachor bedibur echad, Hishmi'anu el ham-yuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'letiferet v'litehila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mikor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'asesh b'machshava tehila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
We go directly to the last stanza, the bottom of page 25. We rise to greet the bride Shabbat. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Please remain standing. We turn to page 39A for our Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMivorach. Baruch Adonai HaMivorach Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated.
We have an English reading, page 39A.
Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their place in the sky, who creates day and night, who rules light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Sivaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk.
Chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Hamari Varavim. On to the second bracha, page 40.
Avat olam bet Yisrael, amcha avta avta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta, al ken Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochmenu v'kumenu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך יומנו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, ועבד אחד אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Page 41. You can do it either way.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha Vaderech, Ushach Becha, Uvkumecha, Ukshartam Leot al Yadecha, Ve'ayulet Hotafot Beinenecha, Utatam al Mizezot Beitecha, Uvisharecha.
Impress these words of mine upon your heart and upon your soul. Bind them as a sign upon your hand and as a symbol above your eyes. Teach them to your children by speaking of them when you sit in your home, when you walk on your way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your home and on the gates. Then your days and the days of your children on the land that Adonai swore to your ancestors to give them will be as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth.
Sorry. Vayomer Adonai El Moshe Lemor Daber El Bnei Israel V'yamar Tal V'yasu lahem tzitzit Al kanfei v'deihem L'dorotan V'natnu Al tzitzit hakana Til techelet Haya Lachem Litzitzit Oritem Oto Usartem Et Kol Mitzvot Adonai Turu Acharei Levavchem V'acharei Nehem Asher Atem Zonim Achareichem L'man tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim l'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohei Asher hotzeiti etchem mi'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem Emet.
We have a responsive reading in English on page 43b. Jacob.
You proclaim the covenant on the seventh day.
You declared and decreed it, we listened and heard it.
You love this day we inherited, delighting in its remembrance. From the time you bestowed it, joy filled the hearts of Jeshurun, the people you redeemed. You exalted Shabbat as a sign between us forever. In 6 days your world was formed, and on the seventh day you rested. To honor your name, they sing songs of praise to the one deserving of praise.
And one of the songs we sing is Mi Chamocha on page 44. Who is like you, Adonai, among the mighty? Ay bye bye bim bim bam, yabba bye bye bim bam. Ay bye bye bim bim bam, yabba bye bye bim bam. Ay die 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 die, yabba bye bye bim bam. Ay die 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 die, yabba bye bye bim bam. Mi Chamocha, Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar bakodesh Norati lo tosefele Norati lo tosefele Malchutecha ra'u vanecha Pokei hayam lifnei Moshe Zeli zeli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי ודע אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל.
Before we continue to our next prayer, we're going to hear from our first group of confirmation students. And I asked the confirmation students as a project to follow one we've done several times over the past years, a project that's really about kehillah, about community, and about the multi-generational spaces that a congregation creates for meeting and for sharing traditions and wisdom. And we're fortunate to have such a space here at the synagogue. And so we paired our students with older members of our congregation who've been here for more time than they have, and for them to share a little bit how Judaism has changed since they grew up, and to ask them for their generation, their wisdom, their generation's wisdom for the future. And I also asked them to reflect on how they feel inspired to continue their Jewish lives after this new milestone. So we're going to hear first from Alana, then Addison, and then Ethan. Then later after the Amida, we'll hear from the other students.
Shabbat Shalom.
For me, the role of Judaism has changed drastically in my life from the time I was little until now. In preschool, I loved learning from my teachers about all of the holidays and biblical stories. I loved learning little bits of Hebrew, and I loved that I was learning this with my friends. Once I graduated from the Har Zion preschool, my love for Judaism did not flourish as it had done in the past. Hebrew school became a chore, and I would always try to argue my way out of it. But of course, if you know my parents, you know that I never succeeded. By the time I was ready for my bat mitzvah, I was mostly excited that I would not have to pay so much attention to religion anymore. But when I began reading the Torah on that Saturday morning, I felt very peaceful. I felt that I had reached a different level of Judaism and developed a different connection to God. This was, of course, very strange to me and has definitely taken some time to process, but I have developed a much deeper relationship with Judaism since my bat mitzvah, which is why I was very excited to find out that I was partnered with Rabbi Merriman for my confirmation project, so that I could learn how he grew and developed his love for Judaism. I was very interested to learn about how he was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and his home synagogue, Congregación Israelita, was a very traditional synagogue, although his family did not keep all of the same traditions at home. He grew up in households in which his father was Ashkenazi and his mother was Sephardi. His favorite holiday was, and still is now, Passover, and it was really cool to learn about his seders when he was growing up. On the first night, he went to his father's large Ashkenazi family seder, and on the second night, he would go to his mother's Sephardi family seder, which contained some Ladino melodies. While I greatly enjoyed learning all of the ways that Judaism impacted Rabbi Merriman, whether it be through Zionism, culture, history, values, traditions, and the one and only God's special message to the Jewish people, I also enjoyed learning the things that he would change about the religion, as it was nice to see how things do not always have to be set into stone. What I will take away most from my conversation with Rabbi Merriman was that he felt that the largest difference from the way he practiced Judaism as a boy to the way he practices it now was that he has become more observant. Since my bat mitzvah, in that first moment I read from the Torah, I have tried to embrace Judaism, its traditions, and its values more and more. And I hope that I will continue on this path, just as Rabbi Merriman did, and continue to hold Judaism and its teachings close to my heart all the way through my life.
Shabbat Shalom. All right. It can be really isolating growing up Jewish in a place where you're the only one or the only few kids in your school who are Jewish. But talking to Norma, I really felt her story growing up. She was one of the only ones like I am in my school who is Jewish, and I was able to find myself in her stories, and I wasn't feeling like the only one who felt like the only one growing up. Norma found herself through her Jewish community, while I myself didn't go with my peers to my rabbi's house and learn stories of the Bible from him while seated on the floor like Norma did. My connection and passion for my religion did come from my religious education. I knew that many young people, especially girls, didn't get the opportunity that I have now in having my bat mitzvah. Even with COVID restrictions, it was definitely a journey, and, well, I wouldn't do it again, unlike Alana. I am very appreciative of what I have. While talking to Norma, the thing that struck me the most was when we talked about her, not young life, but later in life, when she was able to travel, and she traveled around the world. She went to synagogues around the world, and she attended services around the world. And when I asked her what was so different about all these different places? What was anything that like stuck out to you? What struck you as different? She said nothing. The tunes maybe, but I think it made me think. It made me think a lot about how connected Judaism is across the world. We're reading the same text, not only from years and years ago, but the same text that people around the world today are reading. And even in the community she visited in China that is completely isolated from the world, as they fled from Nazi Germany, they still had the same songs. And I think that's something that's really powerful, and something that she was talking about in her wisdom that she gave to me, was to keep asking, keep learning, and keep going with the questions. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of Judaism, is the ability and the understanding that everyone has to ask questions and answer them. And that's something that's very powerful and is kind of makes Judaism immortal, because the more you learn, the more you want to tell other people, and the more you'll tell your kids, and they'll tell their kids. So I think that's the key to our religion, really, is to keep asking the questions and keep looking for answers. I was really glad to be paired with Norma, and her story was wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, Shabbat Shalom. Tonight I'm going to talk about High Solomon. First, I would like to thank Mr. Solomon for being so gracious with his time and thoughtful in his responses. What struck me most as I learned about Mr. Solomon's life was his perseverance in his faith. As a child, Mr. Solomon grew up in Iran when Jews were considered to be second-class citizens. In his hometown, the Jews lived amongst themselves in a separate part of the city. The Jews had a separate butcher, weren't trusted to hold fruit before buying it, and had a stamp on their passports identifying them as Jews. Despite these obstacles, he was part of an active Jewish community. He learned about the Jewish faith and practiced the religion at a time when it took great courage to do so. When the situation in Iran became fraught, Mr. Solomon left to come to America. He moved across the world to a foreign land without his family in order to protect his faith. Mr. Solomon has been an observant Jew his entire life, overcoming barriers to maintain his faith. In my lifetime, I have not been forced to work to keep my faith. I have had the privilege of being able to practice my faith without the same impediments Mr. Solomon overcame. However, in my lifetime, anti-Semitic hate crime has consistently risen on both a state and a national scale. In my high school, swastikas have been graffitied in the bathrooms. Through this, my classmates and I have looked to those who have lived through what we are now experiencing for the first time for comfort. We have leaned on this synagogue and this community for support and guidance through turbulent times. In our interview, Mr. Solomon spoke of his hope for the future and how he was optimistic about the younger generation of Jews who are growing up in this community. I believe that this milestone in my Jewish life means that it is now my turn to help lead this future generation. I look forward to helping this new generation continue the legacy of Mr. Solomon and all of those who have fought to keep their faith through trying times. Thank you.
So Yasher Koach, and we will share a few more words later on. But for now, we're going to continue our service to the Vishamru on page 46. Please rise.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et al Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. בני ובן בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת נלבש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בהגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא יאמרו Amen.
We turn to our silent Amidah for Friday nights, beginning on page 47. We continue silently through to page 52.
Say shalom, shalom, shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru Amen.
Please be seated, and we will now hear from our next group of confirmation students, but I wanted to acknowledge before the two confirmation students who weren't able to make it tonight, Josh Oxer and Josh Harder, who have been here in this building and helping in so many ways over the last years as madrichim and been involved in so many things. So we missed them dearly, and we know they're going to continue to be part of everything going on in this religious school and in this building. So now we're going to hear from Sadie, Jacob, and Hannah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sadie Grelnick, and I had the opportunity to interview Mrs. Barron, a longtime Temple member. Before interviewing her, I knew very little of Mrs. Barron outside of the gift shop, which was named after her. But now, after the interview, I've learned how much history there is behind this name. When I interviewed Mrs. Barron, she spoke extensively of some of the change from how women used to participate in Judaism, as well as other things like the switch from Orthodox to conservative. For instance, Mrs. Barron spoke of how women didn't learn Hebrew and had more restrictions on relationships. She recalled not even being allowed to be in the same room as her brother while he was being taught for his bar mitzvah. It was a pleasure to meet Mrs. Barron, and we had a great laugh during this interview, and I was very intrigued learning about the history of this temple through her eyes. I really enjoyed hearing about all the impactful events and celebrations that happened in this building. I could see the passion and meaning she had and continues to have for this temple. Mrs. Barron grew up near this area and raised her family here with her husband Sheldon. She also recalls moments of community quite fondly, describing how there was a sisterhood who became your social group and were there for each other. One theme I noticed as I spoke with her was the temple as a community, or as she put it was more than a religious building, it was a community. Over time, as society and people have changed, Judaism has changed with it, and whether for better or worse, I think it is up to each individual, but something Mrs. Barron and I can agree on is that community is always for the better. It is one of the core pillars of Judaism, and for now, it is a place that has introduced me to some of my closest friends and teaches me how to live a just and good life. And that, I know, is something I want to be a part of. I am sure that in the future, my personal ideas of what Judaism is to me will develop and grow as well. But until then, it is a collection of stories, ideas, and people that connect me to my community. It is my heritage and the tradition that have passed down from generation to generation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mrs. Barron as she welcomed me into her home and shared her life journey with me. And I would also like to thank my Hebrew school teacher, Mr. Stopek, for making our Sunday studies so much more interesting and memorable. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. For this project, I was blessed to speak with Mr. Grossman. He's been a member of our synagogue for many years, since he was 9 years old. He described what things used to be like and how they've changed. We talked about both the building and renovations to it, as well as about changes to how we observe, our methods, and our culture and community practices. Mr. Grossman shared how the synagogue used to be more conservative than it is now. He explained that Har Zion is on the liberal end of the conservative spectrum. It always has been, and still is. Oak Park Temple used to be more lenient, he said, and we were more conservative, and now we're meeting in the middle. It used to be at Har Zion, for example, that if you were late to Kol Nidre, they wouldn't let you in. And now we're welcomed in whenever we can get here. It used to be that Hebrew school was a couple of afternoons a week, and on Saturday and Sunday. Now, thankfully, it's about half that. Mr. Grossman also enlightened me about our synagogue's architecture and design, and how it's changed over the years. The ark was different, the eternal flame was in a different place, and the ark was made of 2 tablets that moved apart and back together. The Gropper windows were also a big change. The artist had walked away from Judaism until reconnecting with it after the Holocaust. Some members didn't like the stained glass because it made them think of churches. Mr. Grossman shared some good advice. Be patient and be careful about thinking you're the smartest person in the room. I want to thank Mr. Grossman for donating his time to our conversation. I was surprised about how different things used to be, and I learned a lot. For me, being Jewish is important. I think about my place and our place as Jews in society and the world. It's like the architecture here in this building. Mr. Grossman said some members didn't like the windows at first, but then views shifted over time, and now they're treasured by our congregation. I find it challenging to be super observant, but I don't want to lose my Jewish experience and my identity, nor my connection to our community. Back when I was younger in Hebrew school, I sometimes dreaded studying common prayers such as Adon Olam or Lachad Dodi, like homework, but in hindsight, I realized it built character, and I find meaning in the prayers that I studied a long time ago. What makes me feel Jewish is going to the synagogue for bar and bat mitzvahs and holiday services, celebrating holidays in our home. like decorating for Hanukkah, lighting our menorahs, and having friends and family over for Pesach. The other day, during my first period history class, a classmate asked whether Jews speak another language. She said she hoped it wasn't an offensive question. I nodded and told her yes, kind of, and that I learned to read and speak Hebrew, but I don't always know what it means. I feel hopeful when people ask questions and want to learn, and when I can help educate them and demystify our religion and traditions. I feel pride in my Jewish identity and look forward to practicing it throughout my life. Thank you to Mr. Grossman for letting me speak with him. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Henry Gralnick for tonight's confirmation speech. Although we are 70 years apart, we have similar things in common as well as differences. Dr. Gralnick was born in Haifa, Israel, and had immigrated to Detroit, Michigan as an infant. He had attended the same synagogue his whole life until he moved here to River Forest in the 1960s. In Detroit, it was an Orthodox synagogue, and he learned the Talmud up to his bar mitzvah. After his bar mitzvah, he had the option to keep studying the Torah or stop going. Those are two differences we have. He never had to attend Hebrew school in high school, but I never had to study the Talmud. At the congregation at the synagogue he attended, B'nai Zion, the adult congregation was upstairs and the junior congregation was downstairs. There were about 30 to 40 people each week for services. For the high holidays, there were an exceptional amount of people. The whole sanctuary was filled with everyone sitting around the bima because it was in the center instead of here where it's in the front of the sanctuary, including chairs outside in the corridors and hallways to fit about 300 members that went to a shul. When Dr. Gralnick moved to River Forest, he made the decision to attend West Suburban Har Zion over Oak Park Temple because of their traditions. This is the same reason my family did as well. Har Zion fitted our needs because Oak Park Temple is a Reformed synagogue. His family and my dad had grown up Orthodox and liked the environment a lot more because it reminded them of home. Judaism has impacted his life. For Dr. Gralnick, it gave him a certain amount of character. It reinforced his ethics and code of conduct that gave insight into our people. And these ethics, he said, gave him a sense of discipline. I agree. Not being able to eat certain foods, keeping kosher, for instance, has taught me to set boundaries in other parts of my life as well. Another aspect we share is that Judaism has given us a community. And now that there was a lot of anti-Semitism and racial discrimination, the support of your community is important, especially when you feel the outside world threatening you. He said that living in a Jewish area gave him and gives us a sense of protection. I've been given a community from the synagogue, BBYO, and the Jewish Student Connection Club, where I'm a leader there at my high school. For this generation and years to come, we should value our Jewish education and continue to learn its values. As Dr. Gralnick said, the ethics of Judaism is really a foundation of living in harmony and engaging with other people. Judaism, in my view, is something that is fundamental in everyday life, to be kind, humane, differential, and honest. When you grow up and have a family, it shows how valuable Judaism is in your life and why it's important. I'd like to thank this Jewish community for guiding me and allowing me to grow and learn as a person. Mr. Stolbeck and all my previous Hebrew school teachers, as well as Counselor Figa and Rabbi Glick and Mr. Schwartz for making tonight happen. And although I'm very jealous of him because he's traveling through Europe right now and unable to be here tonight, I'd like to thank Dr. Gralnick for taking his time to meet me. Shabbat Shalom.
So I'd like to share a few words to the confirmation students. And what I was struck hearing all of them was how sincere each and every one was in their description of Judaism and in their experience and wrestling with this question that I gave you all. And really each one of you has your own little Jewish world, your own little Jewish outlook and vision, which is amazing. We have this teaching that every Jewish person has one letter in the Torah that's their letter, and they need to activate it and make it theirs. And as I was hearing all of you, I just thought how far down that journey you each have gone. And you have a strong Jewish identity, and that's going to be with you your whole lives, and take that into college. You can always get a job in a synagogue wherever you go to college. And it will bring a lot of richness to your life. So you were an all-star group back when you had your B'nai Mitzvah, and you're still an all-star group, and I think we all know how bright and interesting and open and accomplished you all are, and I'm sure you'll go to wonderful accomplishments in the future. And so there's a deep well of Judaism within all of you, and we're very, we're just delighted that you all came and took time out of, I know you all have busy, busy lives and commitments, and took time to spend time in the synagogue and help younger students and do all the things that you do, and that's not a given. And so we're grateful to all of you for that. How about a Siman Tov and Mazel Tov?
Siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov. Yehelanu, 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 ulechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael.
Please rise for Kiddush, page 55.
Oh, it's right here. Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahavah v'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron ma'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom tehillah lemikra kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodecha ve'ahava u'ratzon Hichaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. Want to drink it? I'm driving. Me too. We're both driving.
Now we know how responsible they are. Please be seated. So there is a Shabbat Shalom. There is a story about the 2nd century sage, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that we tell around Lag BaOmer. And next week is Lag BaOmer, and Lag BaOmer is when we think about his passing, and 500,000 to 1 million ultra-Orthodox Jews congregate Mount Meron and have the ultra-Orthodox Woodstock, as I like to call it. But the story is a very important story in Judaism, and it's about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who at the time of the persecutions by the Romans, he was a zealot himself, and he and his son fled to a cave and spent 12 years in the cave. And according to the Talmud, for those 12 years, they miraculously only ate carobs. And because they studied all the time and they didn't want their clothes to wear out, and you're not allowed to study naked according to Judaism, they took off their clothes and buried themselves in sand with their heads showing up. And they went deeper and deeper into their religious lives. And finally, the prophet Elijah came to the cave and said, the government's changed, it's time for you to return. And the story goes, as they left the cave, they saw farmers just toiling the land as they do. They hadn't seen anybody else in 12 years. And they got filled with anger. And they exclaimed, how could they abandon Torah study for such a mundane activity? And suddenly, their eyes, fire came out of their eyes and zapped the farmers and burned up the fields. And then their heavenly voice came down and said, have you come out to destroy my world? Go back into the cave. And so they returned back to the cave and spent 12 more months. Then the heavenly voice told them it was time for them to try again. And this time they were different. And they saw a man walking, and he had 2 bundles of myrtle in his hand. And They asked him, why do you have 2 bundles of myrtle? He says, well, it's almost Shabbat. I'm going to adorn my house for Shabbat. And he said, but why are there 2 of them? Wouldn't one be enough? And the man replied, well, there are 2 aspects to Shabbat. Shamor v'zachor, observing and remembering, and I wanted to honor both. And there Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, something changed in them. And they just saw the beauty of just ordinary, everyday people and their simple devotions as they go about their life, thinking about all the different things and trying to honor as best they can their tradition. And they spent the rest of their lives going around and helping and healing the people and thinking about how they could be of service. So our Torah portion this week is all about the priests and all of their ethical obligations. And what keeps coming up again and again as we hear whom the priests of ancient times in the Torah were allowed to marry and were not allowed to marry, how they were supposed to mourn, how they were supposed to make their offerings. And the Torah keeps saying, you have to do this for it not to be a desecration of God's name, a chilul Hashem. And everything they did was supposed to be about honoring God and not desecrating God. And this is actually a very important concept in Judaism. We want to honor God, Kiddush Hashem, and sanctify God, and not Chilul Hashem. And our tradition imagines we go through life, and we can go one way or the other. Are we honoring or are we desecrating in all of our actions and thoughts and words in the world? And so, the martyrs of Judaism, Rabbi Akiva, the first of them, considered to be those who did the greatest Kiddush Hashem. But it's much more than that. It's how we treat with reverence other people. It's trying to do good in the world, anything that sanctifies what we call holiness, and as opposed to publicly or even our own hearts doing things that we know desecrates God's name. Being completely focused on ourselves or any other way. And what this story of Bar Yochai to me that we're thinking about in these weeks shows is that it's not so simple what it is to sanctify God's name. And often you could be thinking that you're doing a great Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name, because you're spending 12 years studying and immersing yourself and being as pious can be. But in the end, all of that is just a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name, if you're disrespecting God's creation. And you could not even be thinking about what it means to sanctify God's name, but in your actions, how you walk the world, how you treat other people, could be the greatest sanctification of God's name just by how you are living. And there can be very religious people who follow every single commandment but do not treat their fellows with dignity or respect, or whose minds are narrow. And in the end, they're desecrating while they believe they're sanctifying. And there can be people who are secular, whose kindness and refinement and devotion to ideals and living in spirit and are giving greater respect to God's creation, and that's the greatest Kiddush Hashem there can be. So my thoughts to our confirmation and graduation students, part of what we hope for you is that you also see from your time here that to walk in the world with loving kindness and wisdom and understanding and joy and compassion is following our tradition's teachings, our highest teachings, and is doing a great service to humanity and sanctifying God's name. Shabbat Shalom. So we are now going to move ahead and hear from our graduating students, Alexis and Ben. I asked them to reflect on a memory from religious school or what they will be taking with them to college.
Shabbat Shalom. So I remember the time I sprinted across the upstairs synagogue hallway, joining the frenzy of 2nd through 7th graders, all trying to escape the British police, who were just a bunch of older kids. I skirted around a couple others to avoid being caught by an officer. Heart pounding, I ducked into Murat Ali's classroom, where I found someone laying down, wedged in the bookshelf. It was a member of the Haganah, who quietly gave me a check written in marker on my arm and bid me farewell, off to find others hidden. That was the first time I'd ever played British Haganah, and I was hooked. I would play it on future Wednesday nights, probably once a year, but this day, that first effort at successfully evading the British and allying with the other members of the resistance remains my most clear memory. Why do I so vividly remember this game? Well, first, because it was a thrill. It got my blood pumping, trying to avoid the police. I had a lot of fun running around the building with my friends. As an energetic kid, the game gave me the chance to burn that energy without annoying my teachers, which is something I was prone to doing. And second, more impactfully, was because it reinforced a theme that was already clear to me in 4th grade, that Jewish people are resilient. Over my years in Hebrew school up to this point, we had talked about the Holocaust and the countless other times in which Jews had been persecuted for simply being Jewish, dating back to the story of Purim. What was stressed to us as students was that the Jewish people always responded to their problems and emerged from them. We maintained our religious practices and refused to waver from our beliefs, even when common sense told us to do so. We were strong in the face of adversity, stronger than the oppressor, every time. That fact has always filled me with pride. Looking back on Jewish communities throughout history, the strength that has been on display to allow us to freely practice Judaism today is remarkable. When I was in 4th grade, my goal during British Haganah was to gain the check marks I needed to make it to Israel, to the Promised Land. The game taught me the value, even then, of being free to be Jewish. It was a freedom that the European Jews of the Haganah era struggled to find, and what the entire goal of the Haganah was to provide. Something worth fighting for and risking everything for. Over my decade plus at Hebrew school, I have been lucky to enjoy a safe, free, happy Jewish community. I really can't remember a time I felt uncomfortable within these walls. I have loved spending time with my classmates, and I'm deeply grateful to all of my teachers, Mr. Kupchin, Mr. Schwartz, the rabbi, and Cantor Figa, for making my time in Hebrew school so meaningful. There are so many lessons that I've taken from my experience here, small ones and bigger ones. When I look back on Hebrew school, I'll always think of British Haganah and the Jewish pride that has been instilled in me by this community. It is a pride that will continue to exist wherever I end up. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. As I am coming to the end of my high school career and get ready to move on to college, I had some thoughts I'd like to share about my involvement with the Temple Har Zion community while I was growing up. Being a part of the Temple Har Zion community has contributed to helping me form my Jewish identity. One of my first memories I wanted to share is one of my sessions with Cantor Figa and Rabbi Glick. I was really nervous about starting to study for my bat mitzvah, and I was worried about how much I had to learn. But the support and humor they brought to our sessions really helped me feel relaxed. In the end, my bat mitzvah was really a wonderful experience, and as you all know, it is a special rite of passage we all go through that I really think helps us grow up and gain confidence in ourselves. Over these past 4 years, I have been a madrahim, and it has been a huge part of forming my own Jewish identity. As I have grown not only intellectually but emotionally, I have really been able to deepen my understanding of Judaism through teaching children younger than me the importance and values of our religion. Being an adult in the eyes of our Jewish community and spending time with the children in our congregation has taught me leadership skills. I have gotten to show my community the importance of the older children teaching the younger ones Hebrew values. I hope that they see me and can see themselves in wanting to participate in this tradition of passing down knowledge as we are growing up to the next generation. Another important aspect of Judaism that I have learned as I've gone through my career here at Har Zion is that each individual is able to have their own interpretation of the teachings and stories in the Torah. Yes, they are all written in a certain and distinct way. However, everyone is entitled to taking that information in and making sense of it in relation to today's world. Now, although being a madrahim does not give you the same experience as a teacher, you are a mentor to the kids you advise, and you get to see them grow in their own Judaism. I have loved being a part of helping make that happen. As I mentioned in the beginning, in these next few months after graduation, I will begin my college career, and that will open up a huge variety of opportunities and experiences for me. But no matter where life takes me and what the future holds, what I do know for certain is that Judaism will keep me grounded. Thank you to Mr. Schwartz, Cantor Figa, Rabbi Glick, and my wonderful teachers over the years for helping me develop such a positive feeling about my faith. Shabbat Shalom.
just going to share a few very short words. Smell the dinner wafting into our sanctuary. First of gratitude to Ben and Alexis, because I know your minds are already halfway, at least in college, and the big change in your lives. And as I was thinking about, you both share a lot in some ways of being wonderfully mature and caring and humble and talented people. And the way you relate to other people is a certain special quality. Really hope that you come back and visit us, and you're going to be good representatives of Temple Har Zion, exemplary representatives of Temple Har Zion out into the world. And we hope you take a little corner of this community with you as well. Just like to say always, so when you're in college, remember when you do your first wash, not to mix colors and whites on high temperature together, or you get in some trouble. Tzedchem l'shalom, go in peace, v'shuvchem l'shalom, and come back in peace. We hope you have a wonderful summer before. And I know you both have a very powerful part of tradition already within you. We say at the end of the Amidah that the Torah is planted within us and give us eternal life, as been said tonight. And I think you both have the Torah planted within you, and that's amazing to behold. So Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov. And I also wanted to, since it's Teacher Appreciation Day as well, that, as we always say, none of this would be possible without our wonderful teachers and our dedicated principal, who's out making sure our dinner is ready for us, and they give all their heart, mind, and soul. So we often say in education, you never know the effect of teaching someone, and then maybe many years later they'll come back and say, you changed my life on that day or that day. And often you have to wait years until you have that. But I think in our religious school, you don't have to go that far. You just see how happy and comfortable all of our students are. And that's not my impression of what religious school used to be like. It's not their reputation of what religious school used to be like. And so that's due to our teachers who come here in addition to having full-time jobs and give so much. And so we are grateful for their devotion and for modeling what it means to be in a kind and vibrant Jewish community, and for being caring and inspiring and creative and dedicated, and for not only teaching Judaism, but also a little bit of menschlichkeit to our kids. So thank you very much, all of our teachers, and yasher koach. And now we are ready for Aleinu, page 56. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגר עלינו ככל עמונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומשב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום חשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחתנו, דרכנו קודש אדוני אלוהינו. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני Adonai echad, Ushmo echad.
Please be seated. We turn to our Kiddush Yatom, our mourners Kaddish, and as a community, we are observing the following yard sites: Charles Bakal, Max Bashuk, Isaac Aaron Bloom, Doris Blumenthal, Naomi Bernstein, Mayor Ditlov, Ita Fogelson, Guilford Fred, Sol Ganelin, Louis Gang, Lillian Glickman, Fanny Goldberg, Alice Goldblatt, Harry L. Hutnick, Stanley Horwich, Morris Harry Judd, Minnie Kaddish, Raymond Kalman, Ray Katzen, Joyce Esther Katzman, Eleanor Kaufman, John Lesner, Ira Levine, Seymour Lewis, Schiller Libby, Henry Marcus, Morris Mednick, Frank Miller, Dorothy Newton, Rebecca Orland, Morris Perla, Virginia Poggy, Priscilla K. Rothschild, Minnie Saltzman, Clara Schmidt, Bess Skibble, Mildred Taff, Rita Valens, Murray Weintraub, Veronica Wolf, Ruth Zimbler. If you are observing a yard site or in mourning, please rise and join me in the words of the Kaddish. Yit Gadal ve'yit Kadash Shumei Rabbah. Ve'alma divra kirute ve'yamlich malchute v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael b'agala v'izman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'amei almaya yiparach ve'yishtabach ve'yipa'ar ve'yitromam ve'yitnaseh ve'yitadar ve'yitale ve'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata damiran ve'alma ve'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. We now have announcements, as is our custom on Friday nights, from Jerry Bloom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Here are the announcements for this Friday, May 5th. First, thanks to you, to Art Fairberg for ushering. Yasher Koach to our confirmation and graduating classes on tonight's special service and the work that they did to make it happen. Thank you to our long-standing members who met with these spectacular students to share your stories with them and through them with the congregation. Upcoming, please join us next Friday night at 6:30 for another incredible musical Shabbat. In fact, make it an easy evening by registering first and then coming at 6 p.m. for a simple meal before the service begins. Also next week on Saturday morning, come and celebrate as Caroline Slade becomes a bat mitzvah. Thursday morning learning with Rabbi Glick has recently restarted its next exploration with a new series on the miracle of Midrash. Beginning at 10 a.m. every Thursday morning, each class focuses on one Midrash from Sefer HaAgadah by Bialik. First reading, then studying, and then discussing. Cantor Figa is planning a Fiddler on the Roof sing-along in remembrance of Topol on Sunday afternoon, May 21st at 3:30. Please join us then. On Thursday evening, May 25th, beginning at 6:30, we will observe Shavuot with ice cream, followed by a Shavuot service, followed by cheesecake, and finally, study. We are hosting our friends from Oak Park Temple on this special holiday night. In case you're keeping up with what we are recycling these days, we are adding a special collection of bread tags. Those little hard plastic clips used to enclose bread products are being collected to earn wheelchairs and prosthetics for kids in need. And finally, please leave your prayer books with the binding facing upward so that the Siddurim last much longer. Now join us for a simple Kiddush and Shabbat Shalom.
David Schwartz.
I was once advised to follow the 3 B's of public speaking: be brief, be brilliant, and be seated. So I will do my best. Confirmants and graduates, you guys did a great job. And you were loud, even from setting up dinner, I could hear you, so thank you. Graduates, we're gonna miss you greatly. Ben, you've contributed so much to discussions over the years in Hebrew High and working with the students, and we're going to have some disappointed students when they find out that they have to have new madrichim next year. And the same for you, Alexis. I knew I could always count on you to punctually be there at 11:30. So thank you so much to both of you for being here and for sticking it out for these 4 years. And confirmants, I'm excited to see what you guys are going to bring in the next year or two. Like, you've added a lot to our community already. You have a lot to add in discussions. You do a lot with the students and with the library, and I'm excited to get to keep you guys for another year or two. So thank you to all of you. What you've done wouldn't be possible without your teachers, and it's fitting that it's Teacher Appreciation Shabbat, so I will call them by name: Miss Julia, Mrs. Crook, Mara Eileen, Mara Janet, Mr. Shapira, and Mr. Stopek. Thank you, because we couldn't do what we do without you guys, and we appreciate it. And parents, if you didn't stick it out, we couldn't be here today with them. So thank you for all the schlepping. Thank you for the supporting. What we do is possible because you support us and you say, yes, this is important. Show up, do it. It's good for you. So thank you for everything that you guys do, parents. We have a few gifts, one for each of you. So graduates, you get a certificate and a Tanakh, something to go to take to college with you. So thank you for that. This was a Tanakh that I was given when I went off to college, and I found it very useful over the years to just refer to it on average once every couple years, but it's nice to have it when I want it. So I hope that it is of use to you and does not take up too much space in your luggage when you go off to college. In confirmants, we've got bigger books for you because you don't have to go off to college next year. This is a book called Text Messages, which is a chapter for every parsha and how it might be relevant to your life today in your current life stage. So I'll call off the names. Hannah, coming up. Get a handshake. Addison. Get a handshake. Thank you. You're welcome. Alana. Ethan, you're on deck. Handshake. Thank you. Sadie on deck. Thank you. Jacob on deck. Handshake. Thank you. And I will also acknowledge the two Joshes, Josh Ox and Josh Harder, who were not able to be here, but will receive their presents tomorrow. A quick word about logistics. If you are here with the confirmants or graduates, then we have dinner that way. So please go, don't get food yet, but go find a seat so that we can do the blessings. The sooner we do this, the sooner we eat. It's in your best interest to do this. And if you're not here with the dinner, then you can go that way where there's a simple kiddush, as was alluded to in the announcements. And if you're not staying for dinner, then I would encourage you to come, participate in the blessings, and then go about your way. And with that, thank you to Cantor and Rabbi for your help with preparing them, and Cantor, is back to you.
Thank you. Well, I have had the pleasure to watch you grow and be with you and help you along, and I'm so proud of you. And I could put it this way, I'm shepping naches. And so one last thing, if I'm going to ask you, I know that usually you run away when you see me coming towards you, like to do a prayer. Would you do Adon Olam for us? Would you lead it? Come on and split yourselves up between the two microphones. Let's do the responsive one.
Do you know what page it's on? No. I don't remember. This is not even.
What page are you on?
211. Thank you. I wasn't close.
No, we don't.
Okay.
All right. You want to start? Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra nasa ve'es akol azai melech shemoni kradon olam v'yaharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch noradon olam v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yeh b'tifaradon olam v'hu echad v'ein sheni l'hashmilo v'aviradon olam v'li reshit v'li tachlit v'lo ha'ov v'radon olam v'hu eli v'chai goali v'tzur hevli b'yetzaradon olam v'hu nisi umanosli manat kosi b'yom ikradon olam Miado Akid Ruchi B'yeti Shaviyasera Adon Olam V'im Ruchi Geviati Adon Ali V'lo Iradon Olam Adon Olam Adon V'sher Bala V'terem Kol V'zir Nivra Li'et Nesa V'hasakol Azai Melech Shemoni Kradon Olam.
Please rise for our concluding bracha. Kadosh Baruch Hu, Holy One, blessed be He on this evening of celebration and of pride. And knowing the cantor and I can now retire because we have all of our replacements right here. We expect at least one of you to be a rabbi or a cantor. May we continue to be filled with joy and with gladness of heart, mind, and soul, knowing that our confirmation and graduation students will go out bringing the spark of Judaism into the world and sharing the greatest values of our tradition, and with gratitude to our teachers for all they do to make it all possible, to create a world of loving kindness and a world and a life of meaning and purpose. And let us say, Amen.
Yivarech Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May Adonai bless and protect you.
Ya'ir Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May Adonai's countenance shine upon you. May Adonai bestow kindness upon you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May Adonai's countenance be lifted towards you. May Adonai grant you peace. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
And challah, and a beautiful challah cover. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min ha'aretz.
Jerry, you were
Shabbat shalom.
excellent.
Zoomers.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Kenneth and Mark and Lou. Okay. Just before I'm about to die.